February was a very good reading month for me. I have a stack of books here. So let's dive into the statistics first of all. So I read 4,640 pages across 16 books. Only 24 hours of audiobooking. I really need to get back into the groove with that. A lot has changed at my job, and that used to be where I did most of my audiobooking, and now that is less of a thing for me, unfortunately. So the audiobooking has dropped down. And then my biggest book, if I destroy my neatly made stack, at 512 pages is Then I Have Never Let Him Go by Patrick Ness. And my oldest book, from 1956, is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This took far too much organising. So for the genres, I have one classic. I know it's a modern classic, but I don't care. It's a classic to me. Modern classics. One memoir, one contemporary, 5 sci-fi, 1 dystopian, and 7 fantasy. For the author's nationality, I have 1 Japanese author, 1 Danish author, a Scottish author, 3 English authors, and much to my sadness, 9 American authors. Then for formats, I read 7 books in paperback, 4 as audiobooks, 3 as hardbacks, and 2 as ebooks. Now to restack them in the order that I read them. And just before I delve into the books, just a reminder that the little symbol down here, which is the lock and key emoji, will pop up for each book, reminding you that the content warnings are in the description down below. It's in a Google Sheet, so if you just click on that, there's a list of the books on a tab for this video, and a list of the content warnings if you do need them. So always remember that they are down there for you. The first book I read in February, I read all in one day. Now this was helped by the fact that I was on a train for the majority of that day. However, there were points in time where I was supposed to be doing things, and instead I was picking up this book because I wanted to see what was happening. And that is Wooing the Witch Queen by Stephanie Burgis. This was sent to me by the wonderful folks over at Book Break, thank you so much. And this is a romantasy, and I loved it. Who am I? What is happening to me? I don't know, but I'm enjoying it. So at this one, we follow Queen Saskia, and she overthrew her evil uncle from the throne of her kingdom, but she is known as a wicked witch. And there is a man who turns up, and a man turns up at her castle, mysterious, dark, looks like a wizard, and she's like, I'm gonna hire you, and you're gonna sort out my library. But it turns out that this guy in disguise is actually an archduke who is running away from his own kingdom because he is controlled by them and has no free will. But this archduke also happens to be, in her mind, because she doesn't know he's being controlled, her nemesis. And it's a romantasy, and this is so cute, so well written, so engrossing. I did not look up once on the train. This is just such a fantastic read. It was published on the 20th of February here in the UK, so you can go pick this one up now. And I had such a fun time with it. Like, his requests are a little strange, but he gets the job done, and if he writes her flirtatious poetry and his touch makes her tingle, well, who am I? Why am I enjoying romantasy? I don't know, but I loved it. I loved it. This is just... I really enjoyed the magic system in here as well. That's important to me in these romantasies when I do read them, is I need the fantasy part to also be really well done, and I really enjoyed this. It's on the cozier side, and it's just enjoyable, and I really enjoyed the magic in the world. I would love to learn more about it, but I also was happy enough with the kind of political plot that I was okay not having too much in-depth knowledge about the magic. Like, so well done. And then another arc from Book Break, thank you so much folks, is When the Moon Hits Your Eye by John Scalzi, my first John Scalzi, and this is a sci-fi that I also read a lot of on that train journey, and this is so much fun. So the moon turns to cheese. And this is basically a variety of people's different reactions. They are all in the States, which is understandable. Scalzi himself is American. And it is, you know, NASA's reaction, the president's reaction, some people from the general public's reaction, people who curate, like, science museums that have moon samples, their reaction, and what happens to ordinary people when this happens. The scientific reaction is not like 100%, Scalzi says this himself, but it is pretty well done of like what would actually happen, the dynamics of changes to the Earth's tide, and whether that has any impact, the change on being able to land on the moon, and there's a lot, and it's funny, it's stupid, it's well written, it's well researched, and I had a great time with this. It was just fun. and I want to read more from Scalzi now. It was definitely a fun read, and I am very grateful this one was sent to me. I love a fun sci-fi. I'm really delving into sci-fi so far this year, and just oof, oof. But going back to my traditional fantasy reading roots, we have The Last Continent by Terry Pratchett. I did not read this edition because this edition is my partner's and is personalised and signed by the late Terry Pratchett, and I am not going to ruin this book by reading it. No. So I listened to the audiobook. I hold these up for the videos. This is the case until the end of the Discworld series now. He has them all in hardback, and I am not reading them. This was, if you couldn't tell by the kangaroo on the front and the title Last Continent, all based around Australia, essentially. Rincewind gets trapped in Australia. This, as always, is fun, it's silly, there's great commentary on racism and sexism and xenophobia, and it's just, as always, it's fantastic, and I had a great time. This is not my favourite of the Discworld books. Like, it's still a 4-star read, don't get me wrong, but the Rincewind ones are never my favourites, and I don't know why. I don't know. But regardless, I still really enjoyed it. It's still a 4-star read, still loving my Discworld read through, and I'm very excited to get to this weird vampire one that I am reading in March. Then the third and I believe final arc that I was sent by the lovely folks over at Tor. No, I'm lying. Oh well. And that is Tea You at the Altar by Rebecca Thorne. This is the third book in the Tones and Tea Quartet. I am loving this series so much. So the first book follows Chianthe, who is the head of the magical stuff. She's the Archmage? Is that the word? I think she's the Archmage. And then we also follow Rhaena, and she is one of the guards to a queen in the neighbouring kingdom. The queen in the neighbouring kingdom. Queen's Guard, head of the magic-y stuff. They meet when magic-y person speaking to queen fall in love. Escape, evil queen, open bookshop. Bookshop? Tea shop. Tea shop with books. Took shop. No, that just sounds like Lord of the Rings now. I need caffeine. Regardless, that is vaguely the plot of the first book. There are also dragons, and then romance and fun and healthy discussions of relationships. This is a fantastic, cozy fantasy. I love it so much, and this is the third book in the series. I don't want to spoil it for you, but if you have read the first two, you will want to read the third one. It is just as good. I enjoyed it just as much. It's fantastic. I am very excited and also scared for the final book to come out, because I don't want it to end. Like, just have these come out forever, please, Rebecca Thorne. Thank you. I love these characters so much. Then going back to sci-fi again. I told you, I read a lot of sci-fi this month, and that is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. I am reading this along with the Chaos Walking a read-along that I'm doing, hosted by Becca from the Comic Book Sanctum, but also with Emma and Hannah, and then from the next book we're also going to have Olivia, so everyone will be linked down below. And this is a YA book that was written in like 2008 and discusses the patriarchy. It also then discusses like colonialism and death, and no, it's so good. So basically, when I first started reading it, I didn't pay attention to the synopsis. I was like, sure, I'll join. I have this on my shelves. And I thought it was a fantasy based around the colonization of North America by the European people, because of the way it was written and little bits and bobs and like technology, and there's some people there that they treat quite badly that are already living there. But no, it's a sci-fi. There are 2 moons and it's the same sort of thing, but they're colonizing a planet with clear inspiration taken. And there is a town called Prentice Town, which is where our main character Todd lives, and in this town everyone can hear everyone else's thoughts, and it's a constant noise all of the time, and it's very hard to hide things. But then our main character Todd stumbles across an area of silence where there is no noise, and this turns his entire life upside down, and he ends up on the run from the people that he grew up with in his village, and learns a lot more about the world that they landed on. This is a really in-depth book. It is incredibly woke in a positive way. Fuck the people that say that that's a bad thing. For 2008, like, very well done. Only thing missing so far that could be addressed in the next 2 books, but I don't think it will be just because of the time period it was written in, is how transgender and non-binary people are impacted by the gender differences in this world. that seem to be quite stark. So I am curious about that, and we will see that, but like literally everything else is covered in here. For something that was written in 2008, where we're often like, oh, well, you've got to let the book off, and we understand why this isn't a great representation because it was written in X year. No, Patrick Ness proves that you could have been doing this all along. He's a white man and he did it right. So this was really, really good. I gave it 4 stars, really enjoyed it. I will link also the video of the live stream, which was a complete mess, but if you want to go see it, of us discussing this book, if you want to hear our thoughts. But yeah, this is fantastic and I'm really looking forward to delving into more of this series. I don't really read YA. What is happening to me? Then we have Scottish Folk and Fairy Tales, introduced by Dr. Sarah Dunnigan and edited by J.K. Jackson. I have a few in this collection. They are from Flame Tree, and I've got 2 others, Egyptian and Viking, and I want to collect them all. And I picked this up randomly on a whim. It wasn't on my TBR, but yeah, just decided to randomly pick it up and really enjoyed it. If you don't know, I'm half Scottish, and so this was really interesting to learn a bit more and to see a couple of the little bits. I am more English than I am Scottish, unfortunately, and to see some of the little bits that my mum has mentioned to me over my lifetime, and like little stories that I know, as well as learning a lot of new ones, and also seeing the ones that are mixed in with ones that are common in England as well, because of course we're not that far apart. The stories do vary in length. Some of them are tiny, like 1 page, and some of them last like 20 odd pages, and so it's really interesting to kind of get this mix and dive into it. If you are at all interested in mythology, just from this one book so far, if the rest are like this, I think this is a really good series, and I recommend picking it up for whichever ones you're interested in. I need to get the African mythology one because I know nothing about that entire continent's mythology. And I need to educate. Then I went for a memoir, and that is Pulling at the Chariot of the Sun by Shane McCrae. In his infancy, this mixed-race man with a white mother and a black father was kidnapped by his maternal grandparents because they didn't want him to be raised in a black environment. And this is him dealing with racism that he doesn't truly understand, dealing with his culture and the abuse, and it's really interesting and really fascinating. I will say it was a bit difficult to read at times. So Sean McCrae is a poet first and foremost, and that really comes across in the writing, and it means that it flows very lyrically and has a lot of meaning and thought-provoking sentences that aren't usual in a novel or a memoir. They're not usual in this type of writing, and so it did take me a while, and it took me until I found out in the book that he's a poet for me to then be able to kind of switch my mindset and to comprehend the poetry style that was being used for the writing. So be aware of that going in, but it is a very interesting memoir, and really shows kind of the difficulty of growing up without your culture whilst also loving your abuser. And it's a very interesting read. This fit the prompt of Written by a Man for the Missy Elliott readathon. I will link Cachet's video down below so you can see what that was all about. She does it every year, it's so much fun, and yes, this was written by a man. And then I read another book that also works for the Missy Elliott readathon, and that is The Everlasting Rose by Dhonielle Clayton. The prompts that this one crosses off, it does multiples. One is a sequel to a series. Another one is where there is a love-based sacrifice. Obviously it's harder to know that until you've read the book, but I personally think that this one does count now I've read it. You need the female main character, who of course has to be black, and then also something set outside of our world. This is a fantasy book. It has some basis of course on our world, but it's very different, so it follows all of those. I don't want to say too much about this book because I haven't read The Bells in years and obviously this is the sequel. Basically, there are these young girls that are born and raised specifically with their powers to make people beautiful. Without their magic work, people are literally grey-skinned, grey-haired, completely, like, dull. And so people pay these bells to make them beautiful, to completely change their looks as well, completely redo their hair, redo their bone structure, everything, but also just to add some colour and some life into their skin. But, of course, in this world where that's happening, there is corruption and there is kind of manipulation of these young women and the abuse and how they're treated. And the book delves into all of it, and it's fantastic. And I really, really enjoyed the second book in the series. And I am so sad that the third book, I forget what it's called because it's not on here, No, I'll put it here. Sorry, editing Abby. But I'm really sad that the third book doesn't have a cover like this one, because The Bells has a similar cover to this, so I can't get matching editions, which makes me very sad. But I really, really like this YA series. I don't read a lot of YA anymore. I'm just kind of finishing up some things that I'd started, but this is such a good series. It's Dhonielle Clayton, I adore. Oh, she's amazing. She also has written some middle grade books, and I've been tempted. Then one I read via audiobook, and that is Babycakes by Armistead Maupin. This is the fifth book in, I think, the fourth in the Tales of the City series. This is set in the 50s, primarily in San Francisco, following a cast of characters who live with a landlady, and they all live together, and that's how they know each other. This is very gay in the best way possible. Armistead Maupin himself is a gay man, and so this is all about the LGBTQ+ community, the whole series. I just really enjoy these books. There's always some sort of like mystery aspect in them, always something extra going on that adds a little extra twist to the standard contemporary style of writing that it is, and I have so much fun with this series. It was introduced to me by my uncle, and I'm very, very grateful for that, so I recommend picking this up. The series is essentially just about the lives of these people that live with the landlady, Anna Madrigal, and some of them are straight, some of them are gay, some of them are lesbian, and it's about them living their lives, having partners, like things going on with their parents. It's just like a soap opera, really, but in book form, and I never thought I would like that. But I do, at least when it's written by Armistead Maupin, so slowly making my way through the entire series. Then I did another audiobook, and this was The Employees by, I will not remember, Olga Ravn. This is translated from Danish and is one of my books for the Around the World challenge, and this is a sci-fi where we are getting, if you've ever watched Big Brother, I don't know if America has this, so I may have just lost half of the audience, but if you've ever watched Big Brother and they go and they sit in the chair and they talk to Big Brother, where it's basically like a video diary, and obviously it's broadcast to the world, but you know, it's like the video diary and they sit down and they talk to it. It's like that, but on a spaceship, and they're talking about like the job that they're doing, but then also things start to happen with the humanoid but not human robots that are on the ship, and so they're discussing that, they're discussing their reactions, and they're just talking to a diary essentially, but I think it's like actually a real person, or at least another humanoid robot, and so they go and talk to it and tell it what's going on. It's primarily chronological with a couple of jumps back and forth, and it's a really interesting discussion on work, on devoting your entire life to a job that doesn't care about you, but also that then becoming who you are as a person, missing your life back home, how far you'll go for a company, and what it all means to you, and also humanity, and there's a lot in this tiny little book, and the audiobook was very interesting, because they are actually going and talking to this person to record the information. It's interesting to have them talking to you as the audiobook. I really enjoyed this one. I've wanted to read it for a while, and I'm glad I finally picked it up. And then another short book, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I read this one, buddy reading it with the wonderful Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe, and we loved this book. 5 stars. This book is amazing. I've never read anything from James Baldwin before, and I was quite surprised when we dove in to find out all the characters were white. It's set in Europe, but with 2 Americans who are over there, one of which is a man who is waiting for his white fiancée to come back from gallivanting around Spain, essentially. And I think that Baldwin does an amazing job of writing the privilege of a rich white American man, and how he doesn't think about those around him and the impacts that he has on their lives. And it's all about this man who then discovers and like has a relationship with another man whilst waiting for his fiancée to return. I'm describing this awfully. So David, a young American in 1950s Paris, is waiting for his fiancée to return from vacation in Spain. But when he meets Giovanni, a handsome Italian barman, the 2 men are drawn into an intense affair. Then after 3 months, his fiancée returns from Spain, and he denies that whole side of his sexuality, and tries to move forward in his life with his fiancée, and things go wrong. This is just, it's written so well, there's so much depth. I was like, I didn't intend to highlight it. I started just writing out quotes to send to Olivia in the messages talking about what we'd read that day, and so I realised that I needed to start highlighting sections in the book. There are so many beautiful sentences in here, just like the sentences on their own are absolutely gorgeous, as well as the discussion on humanity, the discussion on being gay at this time period, a discussion on abusing and manipulating people who have nowhere else to turn. And there's just so much in this book. It is absolutely fantastic. 5 stars, and I really want to read more from James Baldwin in the future. Then I read The Sea and the Little Fishes, also by Terry Pratchett, and this is a novella in between 2 of the novels. This one is a witch's story, and it follows Nanny Og and Granny Weatherwax, and Granny Weatherwax is told off for being too harsh, always winning, being too much, and so instead she makes herself nice, which is creepy. I really enjoyed this. I love the witches. They are my favourite after the death stories in the Discworld. This is a really great short story if you can get your hands on it. I still don't know whether to call these rereads or not, but I read The Song Rising by Samantha Shannon. I have read this before, but not in the rewritten edition, which is where the confusion comes in. So Samantha Shannon rewrote all 4 of the books that were currently present for the 10-year Bone Season anniversary, with the improvements that she's got in her writing over the past decade. It cleans up some plot inaccuracies and like little timeline slips and stuff like that, as well as being, in her opinion, better written. And so I got these beautiful broken binding editions that I'm also going to be getting for The Dark Mirror, which is already come out, but I will have to wait for the broken binding edition to arrive on my doorstep. And I'm reading them, so it's new to me because I've never read these words in this order before, but it's a reread because I've read the book. I never know. Regardless, I read it. And of course I do already know the story, even if it is written slightly differently, and I adore The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This book is fantastic. It's the shortest one so far in the series, which means that I got through it a lot faster than I was expecting to. And I don't want to spoil, of course, again this is book 3, so I don't want to spoil what the first book is about, what this book is about. But we follow a young girl named Paige Mahoney. She is an Irish immigrant to the UK, and Britain is controlled by Scion, which is an awful government that runs everything, and people who have essentially magic powers are illegal, and she has magic powers. And so it's about her avoiding capture and death and detainment, and maybe not avoiding it, and what happens going ahead with that. This series I can never describe, and is one of my favourites of all time. It's time for another sci-fi. Like I said, who am I? What is happening? I don't know, but I like it. This one is Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This one was also sent to me by the wonderful folks over at Book Break. I did not realise how many Book Break books I read this month. This was really a book break month. In this book we follow a group of scientists, and they are investigating a moon. They are with a company that wants to extract resources everywhere they can, and they are investigating this moon to see what resources they could extract from it, what type of planet it is, because they can't get down to it because of immense radio interference, etc. And whilst they're doing all of this research and they're trying to get like equipment sorted, etc., things go wrong. Does it say? Yes, it says. Wonderful. It says in the synopsis, so I can tell you, because of some big accident, 2 of them end up on the planet. A planet which is hostile to human life just by its existence, its gravity, its atmosphere, let alone the creatures that they find down there. And this is the discussion of their attempt to escape back up to their spacecraft and go back to humanity, and also learning more about this alien life that is down there. Is it sentient? Does it have full cognizance? And what will happen then if this company goes ahead with its plan to completely mine and destroy the planet? Then the lovely folks over at Picador knew that I adored The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa, which was gifted to me by my partner, and so they gave me access on NetGalley to The Cat Who Saved the Library, the 2nd book in the series. We are following the same cat. We do have the same boy in here, but we also are following a young girl who is asthmatic, and so she can't do the outside physical activity that everyone does. She's severely asthmatic, and so she spends all of her time in her local library, and books are disappearing from the library, and she ends up joining this cat in trying to resolve the issue and get the books back. I loved this. It is the same sort of deal as The Cat Who Saved Books. We have a lot of Sosuke Natsukawa's personal feelings on books and on libraries and on reading that I don't necessarily agree with myself, just in their intensity, but I do appreciate seeing them and seeing this opinion brought to light, and I really enjoyed the fantastical nature of it, how it's used to further the plot in an almost Thursday Next manner, like the series written by Jasper Fforde, and I just really enjoy this series so far. My partner said that because they gave me the ebook, he's not going to get me the matching hardback. Clearly he does not love me. But I really enjoyed this book, and I'm very, very glad that I got the chance to read it. A final book that I read through NetGalley, but it's from the fantastic folks over at Book Break, and this is Rose House by Arkady Martin. This is my first Arkady Martin or Martine, I'm not sure, book that I've read, even though I have 2 hardbacks on my TBR shelves. But we were gifted the ebook because there's a delay on the physical copies coming out, so we were gifted that in case we wanted to read it in advance. And I realised I thought it was like a novel. It's a novella. So I just picked it up and decided to read it. This is a very interesting book about a house that essentially has AI sentience within it. And the owner of the house has passed away and has left access to the house to only one person. No one else is allowed in, and the house will not let them. The doors are all locked, you can't get in. However, a murder has occurred inside the house. Somebody is dead in the house, and it is mandated through the laws that the AI has to report this death to the local police force within 24 hours. And it does so, and that then triggers the series of events that we read in the novella. It was really, really interesting, a really interesting exploration of AI, of death, of so much, and I really enjoyed the book, and I'm very curious now to read a full sci-fi novel from Arkady Martin. Now that I've seen their writing style in this novella, it was really, really interesting. So thank you very much to the folks over at Tor for sending that one my way. And that is everything I read in February. I still don't know how I read that much. I still have a huge TBR to get through, so hopefully I continue reading that much. Please let me know down below in the comments, have you read any of these books? I would love to know your opinions. I want to chat about them because there are so many fantastic books here. If you haven't read any of these 16, then please do leave down below your favourite book from February. I say this every time, and every time I never know. I think it has to be Giovanni's Room. I think that has to be my favourite. Like, I loved a lot of books here, but this one is just like, it's a classic for a reason. There's like that extra kind of, like I gave 4.5, maybe even 5 stars to more than just this book here, but there's just that certain je ne sais quoi about this book. It is the favourite. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you'd like to see what I end up reading in March, if you follow the TBR up there, then you can subscribe and see what I actually managed to read out of that at the end of the month. And I will see you hopefully in the next video. Bye!